All right, your logic exam is coming up, and you know arguments are going to be a huge part of it. So let's cut right to it. I'm going to give you the exact framework you need to ace any question they throw at you. Ready? Let's dive in.
Okay, so picture this. You're sitting in the exam, you turn the page, and there it is, a big block of text. How would you even start to break that argument down? Well, the key, and I mean the key, is having a system. And that system starts with understanding the absolute fundamentals. First up, we're going to look at the anatomy of an argument. Think of it like this. Once you can see all the little building blocks, you can take apart any logical puzzle on that test. No problem. So, in logic, when we say argument, we're not talking about a fight. Not at all. It's really just a structure. You've got your premises, those are the reasons, the evidence, and they all team up to support one thing, the conclusion. That's the main point the whole argument is trying to get across. Okay, listen up, because this is probably the most important first step on your exam. Before you do anything else, you have to put the argument into what's called standard form. It basically just cleans up all the messy language and makes the logical skeletons super clear. All you're doing is listing out your premises, we'll label them P1, P2, you get the idea, and then at the bottom, the conclusion, which you mark with a C. So how do you do that? Look for cheat codes. Indicator words. Words like so or thus, they're basically screaming, hey, I'm the conclusion. And words like because or after all, they're waving a flag for the premises. Let's take an example. Lena is a penguin, so Lena cannot fly. All penguins cannot fly. See that little word so? Boom, that tells you the conclusion is Lena cannot fly. The rest are your premises. So when you put it in standard form, it looks neat and tidy. P1, all penguins cannot fly. P2, Lena is a penguin. And conclusion, therefore Lena cannot fly. See how much clearer that is? All right, so you know how to structure an argument. Now we got to figure out if it's any good. And this next part, validity versus soundness, this is absolutely critical, especially for those multiple choice questions that are designed to trick you. So what's the difference? Well, validity is only about the logical structure. It's like asking, does the blueprint make sense? It's all about that if. If the premises are true, does the conclusion have to be true? That's it. Soundness, though, goes one step further. For an argument to be sound, it has to be valid, and the premises have to actually be true in the real world. So it's structure plus truth.
And this is the part that trips people up. You can have a perfectly valid argument that's based on total nonsense. For example, premise 1, all humans are immortal. Premise 2, Socrates is human. Conclusion, therefore, Socrates is immortal. Now the logic there is perfect. It flows, so the argument is valid. But is it sound? No way. Because we know premise 1 is flat out false. So valid structure, but unsound because it's not based in reality. Okay, let's talk about a classic exam trap. You're going to see an argument that feels pretty convincing. It seems right, but there's a hidden hole in the logic. This is called an enthymeme, and your job on the test is to be a detective and find that missing piece. So what is an enthymeme? Really, it's just an incomplete argument. It's missing a key ingredient, a premise that the speaker just assumes you know. And without that hidden premise, the whole thing is technically invalid because the conclusion doesn't actually follow from what's been said. Let's look at an example. Premise 1 says, anytime one ends the life of a person, it is murder. Premise 2 says, abortion ends the life of a fetus. And the conclusion is, therefore, abortion is murder. Do you see the jump? We're talking about a person in the first premise and a fetus in the second. The argument just assumes they're the same thing without ever saying it. That's the logical gap. So to make this argument work logically, you have to add the missing piece that connects the dots. You need to add the hidden premise, a fetus as a person. Once you stick that in there, boom, you've bridged the gap. Now the argument is structurally valid. And this is exactly what they'll ask you to do on the exam. Find that missing link and write it down. All right, you want a shortcut, a way to get the right answer super fast on your test? This is it. A lot of arguments follow these really predictable patterns, or what we call forms. And if you can learn to spot the pattern, you'll instantly know if it's valid or invalid. No extra work needed. Okay, pen and paper time. You absolutely have to memorize these 5 forms, no way around it. There are 3 that are always valid: modus ponens, modus tollens, and disjunctive syllogism. Then there are 2 that are always invalid, and these are the ones that show up as trick questions all the time, denying the antecedent and affirming the consequent. Seriously, screenshot this slide, make some flashcards, do whatever you gotta do, but get these locked in. Here's a little cheat sheet to help you remember. For any if A then B argument, we call A the antecedent and B the consequent. Just look at the table. If you affirm the antecedent, that's modus ponens, it's valid. If you deny the consequent, that's modus tollens, it's also valid. But the other two combinations, affirming the consequent or denying the antecedent, invalid, every single time. This little table is going to be your best friend on exam day.
So what happens when you get a weird argument that doesn't fit one of those neat little forms, and you still have to figure out if it's valid? Don't panic. You've got a toolkit for that. First, you can use semantics. That just means looking at the definition of the words. Like, John is a bachelor, so he must be unmarried. The definition of bachelor proves that. Second, there's a fancy one called reductio ad absurdum. Basically, you pretend the conclusion is false and show how that leads to some kind of crazy contradiction. And third, and this one's super useful, to prove an argument is invalid, all you need is one counterexample. Just one situation where the premises are true, but the conclusion turns out to be false. Find that, and you've busted the argument.
Look, the only way to get really good at this stuff is to practice. So if you want a full summary of everything we've talked about, and, more importantly, some practice tests to see if you've got it down, head over to gradeguru.nl. All right, before you go, let's run through a final lightning-fast recap. Think of this as your exam day checklist to run through in your head. Number 1, always put the argument in standard form first. Got it? Good. Number 2, validity is just about the structure, not about real-world truth. Don't get tricked. Number 3, be a detective. Hunt for that missing link to solve those enthememes. And finally, number 4, memorize those 3 valid forms: modus ponens, modus tollens, and disjunctive syllogism. Keep these 4 things in your brain, and you're going to be in great shape for this part of the exam. You can do this. Good luck.